Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Today we have a very special guest joining us. It's Michael Menkin, and he is a person who has developed a what he calls a thought screen helmet, which it helps prevent alien abductions. And we're going to talk about that. But before we do, I just wanted to go over a little bit of Michael's background here, because this is a person who he has a website here, Stop Alien Abductions. I'll leave links for everything. And he has another website too. We'll talk about that as well. But according to the website, he has over 30 years of experience as a professional writer and editor. In 2014, he retired as a technical editor-writer for the Aircraft Certification and Standards Division of the Federal Aviation Administration. He previously worked for the Boeing Company, Lassen Tech Product Group of Mettler Toledo, Metawave Communications Corporation, Fluke Corporation, Emulex Corporation, Teltone Corporation, Peripheral Technology, Strider Technology, AT&T, the Robbins Company, Algas SDI, Innovation Incorporated, Panasonic Avionics.
Panasonic Avionics.
Yep, the University of Washington, the University of California, San Francisco Medical Center at Mount Zion, the University of California's Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory, Pacific Avionics, Nicholson Manufacturing Incorporated, Western Applied Research and Development. I mean, this list goes on and on. There's a lot. This is very impressive list, very impressive background, I got to say. And so this, I just want to point this out because, a lot of people might question, okay, well, why they might question this, your background, but this is, you have a serious background. You were in government. You were someone who was involved with NASA. Right. And so I guess before we even go into the thought screen helmet that you've developed, and that you provide instructions on how to create these things for free, or for people. I mean, there's no cost, and you actually help people. You donate these things to people to help them, alien abductees. But I guess your background, you were involved in government. So what was when you were with government? I mean, do they know about this and they're just not talking about it?
Actually, they did know about it when I worked for the Federal Aviation Administration in their standards division. I was on television, and I ran into the director of the FAA, and he came up to me and he said, I saw you on television. And I said to him, what did you think of the program? And he replied, it was interesting. That's all he said. So I worked there for 5.5 years, and they did know that I was making thought screen helmets and working with alien abductees, but they never said anything to me.
And so when, I guess let's go back to the beginning. Like, how did you get into, like, you were doing all this stuff with the government your whole career, and then something happened where you just, were you still working with the government when you developed this?
I got interested in actually, I've been interested in UFOs for a long time. My father had the very first science fiction show on television called Captain Video, which ran from 1949 to 1956. And I believe it's still the 26th most watched television show in history. We were interested in UFOs when I was very young, and I started reading books on UFOs when I was 9 years old in 1952. I've been interested in UFOs ever since. What got me interested in the thought screen helmet is I read Bud Hopkins' book, Intruders. And at that time, I was working for Panasonic Avionics, writing service bulletins and service letters for repair of inline flight entertainment equipment. And I thought maybe there's an answer to this. So I started reading more about UFOs, and I read Major Donald Kehoe's book, several of his books, Flying Saucers Are Real. And he recounts a period when Air Force fighters went up to intercept UFOs, and the UFOs would turn before the fighters turned. It was as if the UFOs knew what the fighters were going to do. Kehoe surmised that they were translating our broadcast, but my opinion was that they were actually telepathic. They were reading the pilots' minds. So I thought maybe I can stop this telepathic process. And I just started reading a lot of science fiction, and I came across books by E.E. Doc Smith, the Gray Lensman, where in Doc Smith's novels, he has his protagonist wear what he called a thought screen. And it's a device that the hero wore. This is a thought screen that prevents aliens from using telepathy. So I decided maybe I can make one, and I started getting leather hats like this and putting different materials in it. I did use aluminum foil; it didn't work. I used metallized plastic that's used for the prevention of static electricity damage to electronic components. And they worked a little bit, but the aliens were able to actually penetrate them after a while. But every day I talked with technicians and engineers about the repair of in-flight entertainment equipment, and I had to write service bulletins and installation instructions for this equipment. And one of the technicians suggested a material called Velostat. And Velostat is used to prevent static electricity damage to electronic components. They make mats out of it. They put material to put printed circuit boards in it so it doesn't get damage from static electricity. It's also used to store explosives because it grounds very quickly and doesn't hold a static charge. So I found abductees on the internet. I actually contacted Professor David Jacobs, and I made hats with Velostat, and they worked. And people told me that they worked, and that was 1999. And I've been making thought screen helmets since 1999 with 8 sheets of Velostat in them ever since. The hats are a little bit better. If this hat is sewn, I have an industrial sewing machine in my basement where I sew the hats now. Originally, I just made them with tape, but now
So
they're very sturdy. And I decided to put up a website that would tell people how to make them because it takes me a long time to make a hat. So I have a site called Stop Alien Abductions, which is a nonprofit public service site. It doesn't sell anything. It just tells people how to make the hat and where to get materials to make the hat. And I just updated the site with 2025, so it's current. And if somebody contacts me about a hat, I will make them a hat for free, but they do have to sign an agreement promising to keep in touch with me because I used to make them and send them to people they never contacted me. So now I call about 15 people with my hats. I can't call everybody to see how they're doing. So I'm still making thought screen helmets, and I've been making them for a long time. I also learned that the hat helped people with headaches. And it's a new process of the brain that I've discovered. So I've got a program where I give hats to people with headaches and monitor their condition. And it cures about 50% of the people with migraine headaches and helps everybody with migraine headaches. So it's really quite a discovery. But it's still stopping aliens from taking people. I found that when the aliens can't communicate with people, they don't come down and don't take them. It actually works better than I thought it would. So that's where we're at right now. Is 2025. Aliens are still abducting people. They have a kind of a program where they're creating creatures that are a little bit like them but look very human, that are integrating into our society. And Professor Jacobs has written several books on the things that aliens are actually going to take over our society. People have told me about their experience with these creatures he calls hybrids, and right now I don't think so because it's very difficult for these creatures, even though they look human, to behave like humans. But go ahead. What else did you say?
Well, I guess the question is like, okay, now this is going on for this is over 25 years now that you've been
Right.
you've come up with this, and how many people you think you've helped since like how many people have you been in contact with that were being abducted on a regular basis and they try these hats on? And before I even say it, there's people who will be just listening to this right now. You're actually wearing one of these thought screen helmets.
Right, I've got one on now. Right.
It looks like something out of, I don't know,
It's actually this is actually a leather aviator's hat stuffed with 8 sheets of Velostat, taped and sewn. That's all it is. Any hat that has 8 sheets of Velostat will work. It doesn't have to be a leather aviator hat, although you can sleep in this, so it's comfortable to sleep in. I also make baseball caps. Let me just take this off for you. This is a little tricky. I'll undo this, and here's a hat with Velostat in it. Here's a baseball cap. These are FlexiFit caps. They have an elastic back on them, so they're comfortable. And I also put a sweatband in the front, and people can wear these caps during the day, and they're not taken. And they also work. This is also a thought screen. A thought screen is anything with 8 sheets of Velostat that stops telepathic communication. And thought screens are from the novels of E. Doc Smith, who is a science fiction writer from the 30s to the 50s.
So basically, your idea for this, you were inspired to come up with this idea based on reading science fiction stories, and so in a way, you were that's pretty interesting. I mean, science fiction.
Yeah, science fiction came to life, right? It's a science fiction idea that's come to life that I made a reality. That's correct. Yeah, I have Doc Smith on my website.
And so how many people you think over the past 25, 26 years now have you been in contact with that tried these thought screen helmets, and how well do they work? I mean, how many cases?
It's over 150 people, maybe 200. I've only had one failure, and that was a woman who was dealing with abductees, and one of the hybrids that aliens made from her was sick, and they came down to take her blood in a transfusion. And a mantis alien came, when she was sleeping, came down face to face and stared at her directly in the face with the staring procedure they do, and overcame her to actually take her blood. And that's the only case I have where a person was really overtaken. But outside of that, people are not taken. I just talked to abductees yesterday, and they still say the hat works. So the hat's still working. Now, aliens have taken 13 thought screen helmets and 3 baseball caps like this. They will go all through a person's house looking for hats. They even took a hat that was in a box in a closet. And very recently, I had an abductee who keeps his hat in a locked closet. I tell abductees to keep their hats in a locked closet because the aliens won't go in a locked closet. They don't know what locks are. But the aliens completely ransacked his house looking for the thought screen helmet. They couldn't find it. They did find his baseball cap, and you can take the Velostat out. They tore the Velostat out of it, not completely. It's sewn in, and left it. But that really frightened them that they went through his whole house. That happened very recently. But they do take thought screen helmets from people. I've had other accounts of hybrids taking thought screen helmets from people when they're not wearing them.
So what makes Velostat I mean, why is Velostat preventing? How does that prevent
Velostat is a conductive plastic. This is a plastic with carbon in it. It even has a military specification, so it conducts electricity, and it's used for static electricity protection of components in the production of electronic parts. You can buy it. I buy it in 150-foot rolls. It's $200 a roll. This is 6 thousandths of an inch thick. You can also buy it 4 thousandths of an inch thick and 8 thousandths of an inch thick. But this is easy to work. It does something to the mind that prevents the mind from processing telepathy. I really don't know how it works. It's a discovery that I made. There's something going on in the mind from this material that stops telepathy, and the aliens really don't like the hat. There are people who stopped wearing the hat or forgot to wear the hat that they sometimes beat up. I have one abductee who 6 hybrids came down. 2 of them beat her up, and 4 of them looked on. And every time she didn't wear a hat, they'd come down and beat her up. And eventually she gave up because they beat her up so much. She had a mentally ill son who didn't like the hat, so she didn't wear the hat all the time. I also had one abductee who stayed over a friend's house and didn't have the hat, and the aliens put 300 half-inch scars all over her body. She had to go to the emergency room of the hospital. They said they've never seen anything like that. So they're very vindictive creatures, and they really don't like the helmet, but they haven't figured out how it works. I actually had one abductee who left the hat on a bed, and they cut out some pieces inside and outside. They cut out the leather and the plastic, trying to figure out what it did, but they've never figured it out so far. They've never worn it themselves. But if somebody leaves, if an abductee leaves a hat lying around, the aliens will take it. So as I said, I've lost 13 helmets so far.
So yeah, and I guess that's another thing. I mean, like a lot of people out there who are watching this, like a lot of people who follow this podcast, there are people who they believe that they know that there's something here. I mean, I guess for a lot of other people out there who are just unaware of this, if a lot of people, I would say, some people consciously remember these events. Sometimes they experience missing time, and then they end up going to a psychiatrist. They get hypnotized, and they figure out, oh, this is what's been going on. And I think there has to be a lot of people out there too who have no idea this is going on.
Well, there's another interesting aspect of this, and I have a website about this called Aliens and Children, because children do remember what happens to them, and they make drawings. And I have over 100 drawings made by a 5-year-old girl and her brother of their abduction experiences that tells you a little bit about the aliens. So children do remember it. Many people. You can go to the top of the site and you can click on the drawings. Many people do have experiences of being abducted when they were children. I have several men who have terrifying experiences. One man wakes up every morning dreaming about when he was abducted by children, and he's very frightened. I gave a helmet and a hat for him and his son. They haven't been
abducted by aliens.
Since.
Children
By aliens.
Yeah.
And I have another man who remembers when he was abducted when he was very, very small. He remembers being in a crib and throwing all of his stuffed animals at a gray alien who was coming to get him. So the aliens do abduct children, and some people do remember their childhood experiences, because as children, the aliens are not as effective at erasing short-term memories as they are with adults. So we have many children's drawings, and I have on my website, if you have drawings, please email them to me. I can give you an address to mail them to me, but I'd like to put more on aliens and children. I have a whole bunch of drawings now of different alien experiences and child's drawings of hybrids, which shows aliens in different situations. I also have, I think the most interesting drawing I have is of an alien walking on the floor with its 6 appendages. The aliens have 4 arms and 2 legs. They're not humanoid. There are 4 drawings on the site drawn by Joni Strother, where I have, she has drawn the alien she's seen. She's drawn a male and a female. The female has 4 arms. The male is wearing a robe, and the aliens dress differently than we imagine them. I have several other abductees who will also tell me that the aliens dress in robes. One said they dress like humans did in the 16th century, but the aliens wear robes. They don't wear any kind of suits, although the Greys wear some kind of skin-tight suit.
Yeah, I have this on
where
the screen for people who are listening to the show.
yeah,
I'm showing some of the images right now from that website,
and
aliensandchildren.org. Of course, I'll leave the links for all of these things so everyone could check it out for themselves.
you can go to the link adult drawings of aliens too. That are 4 drawings made by an adult. That I show you. Joni's shown a male, a female, and then 2 grays. And the mantis aliens are not human. They have some kind of sensory organ on their face. It's not whiskers. Joni says that it's hard, and they have very large black eyes, not really a nose or ears. And they're telepathic. They don't speak a language. And from what I've read in the different accounts of being abducted, most of the aliens that people experience communicate by telepathy. They do not speak. But go ahead.
Yeah, and
Getting back.
so the aliens themselves. I mean, from your point of view, after all of this time that you've been, researching this and working with people, providing thought screen helmets to them. I mean, is there anything? A lot of people say that they're good here for, they're here to help us and they're good and all this kind of stuff. What's your feeling on that?
Well, they're not benevolent. I just said that when you stop them, they get very angry. They beat up several people. They've also physically hurt people. I call them Nazis from outer space. They also harass people. I have another account of a woman and her young daughter, and they both had helmets. The daughter was reluctant to wear the helmet, and the aliens kept telling her that if her mother doesn't stop wearing the helmet, they're going to do something to her mother. And they harassed and frightened the daughters so much that the mother stopped wearing the helmet, and they were both taken. Now, also, she contacted me. She was going to send the hats back. She put them in boxes, and the next morning the helmets were gone. So the helmets were taken. She also had a different experience. She experienced reptilians as well as the gray aliens. So the reptilians, I think, may be working for the aliens. David Jacobs thinks that the reptilians are another race that the aliens have enslaved to help them. This is one account of both reptilians and aliens working together. His book, The Threat, you've got it. Okay, you've got Walking Among Us. That's his latest book. Now, I do have another person in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, who was abducted, and she has seen both gray aliens and Bigfoot. Not at the same time, but she has an account where she was with her friend and they came upon Bigfoot, which was 7 feet tall. They were very frightened. She started to run, and her friend was paralyzed in fear. And she remembers actually running back and getting her friend to run away from this creature, who did not run after them. And they told their parents, and the parents said, "Oh, it's just a man in a fur suit." But she thinks it was really Bigfoot. So that's one case of a person encountering both aliens and Bigfoot.
Yeah, there was a lot of cases actually throughout the years. Actually, actually right here in Pennsylvania in the early '70s, where there were UFO and Bigfoot sightings that happened at the same time. So I wonder sometimes, I speculate, is there some connection there? Maybe I don't know. We don't know. I guess all of that is speculation. But it seems like the reality is that there is something here. There is something interacting with us. I know this for a fact because I encountered one of these things when I was a kid. That's the only thing I ever remembered. If it
Yeah, it
continued to
really
happen, I
frightened
don't
you,
know.
didn't it?
I was scared out of my mind. Yeah, I was
Yeah,
scared out of my
yeah.
mind.
Now the Bigfoot was in the same place where she saw 3 gray aliens by a stream, not at the same time. So it was right in the same area. So maybe there is a connection. Yeah.
Yeah, in some of these cases, or maybe they're experimenting with these creatures, these Bigfoot creatures, and they're just very elusive, and we just haven't been able to prove it absolutely at this point. But I think that there's just so many people that have seen Bigfoot. I've encountered an alien creature when I was a kid, not a Bigfoot, but I mean that scared me. And of course, I don't know if if they keep interacting with me, because if they do, I don't have any memory of it. But there are people who somehow are able to retain some memories, some conscious remnants that they'll keep in their heads, and then they'll seek help. And I guess some people, if they go on Google, they'll come upon your website and there looks like there's a possible solution to this. Maybe I could stop it from happening. And you said that there's how many people have you talked to? That's you said it was 150 to 200 people. Out of that number, how many people have this stuff taken from them or stolen from them by these things or attempts to?
From my count, they've taken 13 helmets and 3 baseball caps from people who left them out, who were careless with them.
And then the rest of the people have no problems anymore. Is like
they have no problems, and I've lost some people. Stopped contacting me. That's why I now have people sign a form saying that you promise to keep in touch with me to get a hat, because I used to send a hat to people and never hear from them. So I don't know. I don't know what happened. I can't say. I've lost contact with a lot of people. So that's I try to call about 15 or 20 every week, but I can't keep in contact with everybody who's got a hat.
Now, I am absolutely certain, and I'm sure you are too, is that there is a cover up within the government with regard to this, and for who knows how many reasons.
Well, I have an interesting story if you're interested.
Oh, yes, I'm very interested.
I have a woman who has implants. She actually had an implant in her gum that the dentist removed and put in a vial. And she didn't put it there, but she has an implant in her chest. And once she was x-rayed and doctors were talking about it, they told her the size. They said it was 3 centimeters. It was big. And she found a doctor in Canada who took x-rays of implants. So she drove to Canada and had x-rays of implants taken. And on her way back, she stopped in a motel. And when she was in the motel, her car was broken into. They broke into her windows, and they took the x-rays and her abduction journals. They didn't take anything else. They even left her iPhone in the car. So whoever it was aware this doctor was making x-rays of implants and stole her x-rays and journals. They don't want anybody to know. And she was very frightened. I still talk to her, but she's reluctant to talk to me. She's the same person who had aliens put 300 half-inch cuts all over her body when she stayed over a friend's house without the helmet. So she's very frightening.
So you think that could have been? I guess here's the question with that though: was it government or was it the?
We don't know who it was. I don't know who it was.
Well, I would have to imagine that your background and everything. You would have to imagine that somebody in the government has to be paying attention to what you've been doing, and to the Velostat solution, right? To the hot screen helmet. I mean, do you think they would be interested in this? Are they using it maybe on pilots? I mean,
I don't know. I can tell you that for 1 month, Eglin Air Force Base was the most frequent visitor to my site. So I have very sophisticated tracking software on my site. And I have other Air Force sites and Army bases that have been to my site, because it does list the server on my site. I can do that. So they are looking at it. Now, when I first started, I sent a letter to the Secretary of the Air Force, the General of the Air Force, was both. And then I sent letters to the commanding officer of the Air Force Base we have here, McCord, and then Fairchild, which is in Eastern Washington, and Eglin Air Force Base. They never answered me. But I sent the letters by registered letter, which is really expensive. And I even have the receipts from the post office to prove that I did that. So I have contacted them myself. But outside of my tracking software, I don't know how much they're interested in the hat, and they've never approached me.
Yeah, I don't think that they would. I mean, if they did, then that's like spilling the beans. But I guess it's interesting your background with all of these. Like you're talking some of the contractors here and the government contractors.
Right, I was a technical writer for a lot of companies. I had a secret clearance too at Boeing when I worked for Boeing in '85. Yeah, but nobody's Nobody's really been interested. When I was at Boeing, also, some people came up to me and said, "I saw you on television," but that's all that happened. No, nothing else happened. That's
And
it.
so I would imagine though, I mean, like within the last couple of years, there was a guy from the Air Force who contacted me. It was off the record, of course, and he said that the Air Force, according to him, he said he had an alien implant in him, and he was told this by a doctor, and that the Air Force actually perform surgery to remove alien implants from people from people that go into the Air Force. He said that the Air Force does a secret scan of you when you first get there. You don't even know it. And then he was called into an office and a doctor told him that he had an implant. And it makes me wonder, if your solution works, you would have to think that the Air Force and other military other people in the military would be interested in this solution, because you don't want to have you would think you don't want people in the military being affected by alien telepathy.
Well, you can go to stopabductions.com and I list places where you can buy Velostat and hats, and I show you how to do it, step by step instructions, so they can make a hat from the website very easily. And it gets at least 200 visits a day. Sometimes it gets up to 400 visits a day. So, yeah, I'm sure the Air Force is aware of it. If they make thought screen helmets or not, I have no idea. Nobody's told me. It's all secret. So I can't say.
So, okay, now people wearing the most people, I guess, would probably, in the daytime would probably wear the kind of cap that you're wearing
Right.
right now when they're
Right.
out and about. If they're subject to this, if
Right. It
someone,
just says Velocet in it. Right. Right.
yeah,
That's
but
all
it
it
looks
says.
like a normal cap. It doesn't look like.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's a baseball cap. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's
then
made
for the
by.
evening hours,
You
it's
can
probably
see the.
best to wear the other thing.
You can see the label. If I can show you the label on it, it's
Yeah, flex fit.
yeah, yeah. You can buy these. I get them wholesale. I have to buy 12 at a time to get them wholesale, but I get them wholesale. I just got 12.
And
Yeah.
then with the other hat that you were wearing, that would be something probably people would wear when they go to sleep at night.
Right. You can go to U.S. Wings. That's a Henschel hat, but I have several companies on my website that make leather hats. You can also search on uh, eBay or Amazon or other places to get leather hats. I tell people to make sure that the hats don't have any zippers on them because it's harder to make.
Yeah.
This was made by Carolina Leather Works. They stopped making the hats, but Carolina Leather Works used to make hats that had felt in the inside. I had to take it out, but these were really good hats. Henschel Hats also makes motorcycle hats without any zippers. But yeah, if you go to Amazon or eBay, try to get a hat without zippers because it's harder to sleep in a hat with zippers and use it. So these hats are better than the really fancy hats.
So how many people would you say visit your website, stopalienabductions.com every year? How many people would you think on average?
Uh, well, let's actually when it was on Stumbled Upon, it was quite a lot. It was 1,000 a day. Uh, in the first part of this century, I got 1,000 hits a day, but let's just do 400 times 365 times 25 equals that's 36,500,000.
Wow, that's a lot.
That's
Yeah.
a lot of people. Yeah.
So obviously, there's people who are having this problem. This shows this. I mean, people are dealing with this issue and they're looking for a solution. And a lot of them are finding this as a solution. This helps prevent these aliens from taking control of people because that's what they're able to do. Well, when you have no protection like this, they could take control of you. If you're wearing this Velostat hat outside of that one case that you said, it seems like it works and it prevents it from occurring.
It has worked. I just made them for 2 abductees and it still works. They're still telling me it works.
So what's the what do you think is going to happen in the future here with this? I mean, at some point, more and more people in the world are going to become aware of this reality that we're living in. I mean, a lot of people just aren't aware of it. I mean, that's the truth of the matter is.
Now, some abductees tell me there's going to be some kind of final event. I don't know what's going to happen, but I have three abductees who were the aliens were actually training to fly their craft to perform rescue maneuvers. Evidently, the aliens have a shortage of pilots. They have so many, but they said they were going to be rescuing gray aliens on the ground. So they're going to do something to finalize their activities. Now, an incident in Exeter. I don't know if you've got that book. It's an old book on UFOs. There were electricity was cut off in New Hampshire and other states in New England, and this was done because the circuit breaker stations, the circuit breakers were blown out. I have a site, a page called The Alien Plan for Humans on aliensandchildren.org, where I say that aliens will cut off electrical power all over the world, and that will be an indication of their final event that they're planning. It's not going to be like the invasion of Normandy, but they're planning to do something to really take control. I don't know when that is. I have abductees who tell me it's going to be soon, but they've been saying that for 20 years. So I can't give you a time frame, but I've got hats all over my house just in case it happens. So they are going to do something. More people are going to be aware of it. And on Aliens and Children, I talk about my theory that the aliens have abducted so many people that they damage the human genome, and the human genome is breaking down, and that is actually the cause of the epidemic of autism is alien abductions. That's my theory, because a lot of people I make hats for have autistic children. It took me a while to figure that out, but there's so many autistic children belonging to people who are abducted, there's got to be a connection. So that's my theory of the cause of the epidemic of autism. But
So
what?
do you think? I mean, that's very interesting. Now, of course, it's a theory and it needs to be
Right.
researched, and that's another thing. I mean, how do you view the way the scientific community has been dealing with this for since it
As
started?
David Jacobs says, they've turned their backs on it. They won't deal with it. They refuse to deal with it at all, even though we have a lot of convincing videos and older films of UFOs. And I think that Roswell was real. I read Stanton Friedman's book, Crash at Corona, and I went to one of Stanton Friedman's talks. I think it really happened. But scientists won't deal with it. I've never had any scientists be interested. As a matter of fact, before I went on the air, I went through, I've got a whole bunch of papers. I've got a big pile of stuff. Uh, and I have one scientist, if I can find him here. Uh, he's an astronomer, and he had his class study aliens and children. Um, and Just a minute, let me see if I can get him. But none of his students contacted me. They didn't do that. I've got a big pile, so I don't have his name offhand. But he was an astronomer. Here he is, Leslie. His name is Leslie Looney. Looney. He's director of the Laboratory for Astronomical Imaging, and he had his students look at my site, Aliens and Children, and make comments on it. But he's never contacted me, and the students never contacted me. They weren't interested in talking to me personally, although I'll talk to anybody. But they didn't do that. So scientists are not interested in UFOs, and Dave Jacobs says that. Um, Jacques Vallée has a book on it. He's a scientist, but they still ignore what he says, which is also fascinating. He has a lot of books on the subject. As far as I know, the scientific community is not interested. The dentist who took this implant from the woman's gum kept the implant. He would not return it. She's even heard doctors talking about the implant in her chest, but they don't do anything. Now, there's another interesting thing that has happened in the Allagash abductions by Raymond Fowler. Those aliens were a little different. They weren't the same aliens, but they made an experiment on a man's leg and put something. Something he had a growth on his leg, an unusual growth, and the aliens were doing some kind of experiment, and he had it removed. He found that the specimen went to the Joint Pathology Center, and Raymond Fowler even gives the name of the doctor who ordered that removed and sent to the Joint Pathology Center. And I believe from what Raymond Fowler says that the Joint Pathology Center has orders to every hospital in the United States to send samples of very unusual pathology to them. So they must be aware that aliens are doing experiments on humans, since the hospital took this sample without his permission and sent it to the Joint Pathology Center. I think that's still ongoing. When another person went to the hospital who was abducted and they removed the fetus, she said they removed the fetus, and a day later, two men in suits came and told her not to tell anybody. They said, if you tell anybody, we'll take your children away from you. So she was threatened not to tell anybody that the hospital took the fetus away. So the hospital, they must know what's going on. They've got orders to send it to the Joint Pathology Center in U.S. the government. That's the part of the government that knows what's going on is the Joint Pathology Center. It's not the CIA or the FBI, but I'm sure they have many samples.
Yeah, there's been, I mean, regarding scientists, I just want to get back to that for a minute. There are some scientists that are investigating this, like Avi Loeb and Gary Nolan, and there's some other guys too that are out there.
I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, there's some, but it's not a lot, but it's getting better. I think it's starting to get better, but at the same time, though, I think it's been criminal that they've ignored this. But I think at the same time, I think it was the stigma that's been created for this. I mean, a lot of people who would hear this conversation that we're having right now think that this can't be real. What are these guys talking about? But it is real, and that's the whole thing. I think a lot of us in this world aren't just ready. We're just not ready to accept it. I am. I can't help it. I have my own experiences.
It's really fantastic.
Yeah, it's beyond anything.
It's totally fantastic. And I just talked to an abductee yesterday. We still don't know why they take children and what they do to children. And they take very young children, and I even think they take babies, because people have had babies in a crib, and they come in the morning, the baby's in another room in a crib, and the baby's on the floor, and it's a very young baby, so it can't crawl out of the crib itself. So how did it get out of the crib? And the answer was the aliens took it out of the crib, and since it's hard for them to put it back in the crib, they just left it on the floor. So there are people who, if you are a couple and you have a very young baby, and your baby, of course, is in a crib, and in the morning, after you wake up, you find it on the floor, it's been taken. Yeah, so you ought to contact me if you have that experience, or if your child is making drawings similar to the ones on aliens and children. That child is being taken, because the aliens cannot totally erase a child's memory as they do an adult, because they are child and they're immature and they haven't developed fully.
Yeah, what is that? What is that really? Why do kids have an easier time seeing these things? Because I saw one when I was a kid, right? And now, but when you're an adult, it's harder for some reason. How they seem like they have it figured out by the time you're an adult. I guess it's maybe they're doing something to you when you're a kid, maybe putting implants in or whatever, putting subliminal messages in your head so you don't remember. I don't know. I guess it's all speculation, but what do you think?
My view is it's harder to erase the short-term memories of children, because they're children and they're immature, so they still remember some of their experiences and they draw them. They're also scared out of their wits and sometimes they are left outside of their house, and the parent sees them crying outside with the door locked, and they can't figure out how the child got out of the house. Because the aliens don't put them back in the house, they leave them out, which also frightens the children. So the children remember the experience. I'm sure there are children all over the world who remember their abduction experience. I have emails from Arabs in Arabic and other languages as well. And I've had articles written about me in Italian. The Italians are interested in alien abductions.
So, I mean, if I mean, it must be really tough. I mean, for the parents in a situation like this. I mean, who do they turn to? I mean, who do they can't really talk to even their friends probably, or anybody else in their family. It would sound too crazy to some people.
I I had another page on my website uh, about trauma indicators in children, and it was from the National Institute for Trauma and Loss in Children. And I had a whole list, a whole table of trauma indicators in children, but the National Institute for Trauma and Loss threatened to sue me if I didn't take it down.
Hmm.
So maybe if I can get more proof, I'll put it back up. Um, uh, these are the established trauma indicators. I have what really are definite indicators. The child has trouble sleeping, afraid to sleep alone or be left alone even for a short period of time. That's an indication that they're being abducted. The child becomes hypervigilant, forever watching out for and anticipating that they are about to be or are in danger. That's a definite sign that a child is being abducted. Um, a child seeks safety spots in their environment and in whatever room they may be in at the time. Children who sleep on the floor instead of their bed after a trauma do so because they fear the comfort of the bed will not let them sleep, so they won't hear the danger. Um, and those are the real indicators, the definite indicators that a child is being abducted.
And somebody told you that you couldn't put this stuff on your website.
They threatened to sue me if I didn't take it down. Yeah, and I didn't. I don't. I had some people who would testify, but I don't know how it would go in court, so I took it down. Yeah, it's a whole table, and then I have of the established indicators. The following are possible indicators that a child is being abducted by aliens, and that is they verbalize a desire for revenge. Or they act as if they are no longer afraid of anything or anyone, and in the face of danger, responding inappropriately, verbalizing that nothing ever scares them. If they do that, they may be abducted.
So these are all just possibilities. These are all
possibilities.
Yeah,
right,
and so, but
right.
you were threatened that if you put these possibilities, leave these on your website, then hey, we're going to sue you.
Right. So there are additional indicators: phobia of water or swimming. On Aliens Your Children, you will see very young, crude drawings of children's put in some kind of vat of liquid. And this is a complete mystery to us. We don't know why they do that. But if a child has a phobia of water or swimming, that may indicate that they've actually had that experience by aliens. Another is fear of doctors, clowns, and animals with large eyes, such as owls, because they've seen gray aliens or other aliens with large eyes, so they're afraid of clowns, or doctors because the aliens do medical things to them. Another indicator of a child being abducted are vivid nightmares, emotional, lifelike dreams. The aliens suppress our short-term memory, but we remember the long-term memory remembers the experience, and children are so terrified that they have frequent nightmares of their experience. As I said, I have two men who have nightmares every day of their abduction experience. It frightened them so much. If you've been abducted when a child, I'm sure it scared the heck out of you. You remember it.
Well, I all I remember, there was something in the room. The only part I remember was there was a creature standing right by the bed there, and there was this humming sound going on along with it. I talk about it all the time on my podcast, but that's the only memory that I have of this. And it was, I mean, of course, I was scared because nobody else in the house, even though I'm screaming for help, nobody was. It didn't wake anybody up, and it didn't matter no matter what I did. And then somehow I conked out, and I wake up the next day, like, so that's what my experience was, and I
Now, a
never knew
lot,
what it was. It took me 10 years to figure it out. I didn't know what I thought it was the devil. It took me 10 years
right,
at least to
right.
figure out that this was alien.
Did, did
That's
you ever did you ever draw them when you were little?
no, not really. No, I drew the hand of I clearly saw this creature's hand. It only had 3 digits on its hand, and I used to draw that, but that was
Okay,
about
so
it.
that you remember.
Yes, the
Right.
hand.
If you're listening to the show and you've got drawings like that, you email me copies of those drawings. Yeah, I'll put it on because your kid's being abducted.
So
Yeah,
that's
and this
something
is
else.
all
I
over
mean,
the
this,
world.
now how do you help parents or with this? I mean, do the kids have to wear these things at night? Then is that
I give them to some kid. Yeah,
like the
yeah, I
parents?
do.
I
I
mean, you
do
threw
have
the
them.
parents.
The parents and the kids wear them. Yeah, yeah, I
Hmm.
do have that.
That has to be
Yeah.
tough, though. I mean, how does a kid go to school and stuff like that with this kind of?
They
Because
still. Oh, this is an interesting problem. I had kids who were abducted when they were in school and they were missing,
wow.
and the authorities were very reluctant to report that these kids were missing in school. They were taken out of the school. They were gone for like 4 or 5 hours. Yeah, that happens.
And I'm assuming too that the parents are they're getting abducted too, because that's usually how
They're
it seems
being
to
right.
work.
They're getting abducted
All
too.
of them,
Right.
the whole family.
Right, the whole family. Aliens, they do the whole family. Children, parents, grandparents, great grandparents. Yeah, they're all abducted. They go through families, right? Because it's a genetic study. They take them for genetic reasons. There's some reason that they can use them to make hybrids. So they keep working on the family. That's right.
And it's a generational thing. It's basically, I
Right.
mean, if you're affected, then most likely your kid's going to be affected when you have kids later on. So
That's
that's how it
correct.
works.
Right. Right.
And so, like, okay, if right now there's, I'm sure there'll be some people out there listening to this show, and maybe they never even knew about you or your website, and but you do have a solution, and it does seem to work for a lot of different people.
It does
Uh,
work
and
right.
and so, what do you have to say to those people?
Go to stopabductions.com and make the hat with my instructions. You don't need a large leather hat. Any large hat that you can put 8 sheets of Velostat in will work. Anything. I have a woman who uses old time shower caps that were very large, and she makes thought screens out of that. You can put it in a large baseball cap. Uh, so any large hat that you can put over your head and put Velostat in will work. You can tape it. I have an industrial sewing machine. You can't sew it with a regular sewing machine because it's so thick. But if you do have an industrial sewing machine, it's much better to sew it. But yeah, you can buy it by the roll. I recommend if you can afford it. It's $200 a roll. You can buy sheets on the internet, but it's really a ripoff. They want $11 a sheet. I think the last time I checked, and you got to buy 8 sheets, and so it's really expensive if you've got to buy it on the internet. So be careful of who you buy it from and the stuff that you buy. But any hat will do. And also, if you're going to get a leather hat, uh, get a leather hat that does not have zippers on it, just a straight hat because you're going to sleep in it. The zippers and other stuff is going to be cumbersome and more difficult to sleep in. So try to get a simple leather hat if you can. There's eBay, Amazon, there's all kinds of websites with leather hats. I have an English website also on stopabductions.com that sells leather hats. Are expensive. They're $75. But the Henshaw hats, I think, are now 35 or 40. I haven't checked the price recently, but it's around that, and that you can make a good thought screen from.
So I guess though, I mean, it's worth it though in the end. I mean, if you're someone
Yeah,
who's experiencing this on a regular basis and you want it to end, I mean, whatever the cost is, if it's $100 even, I mean, I think you'd
right.
probably be okay. I guess this is what I got to do, and so I'm hoping that's that was one of the purposes I really wanted to have you on today, because I'm not sure if a lot of people are aware of this. I've talked about it a few times over the last 4 years about your. I wasn't aware of it. Actually, somebody made me aware of it, and then I looked into it, and I've talked about your site, and I thought it was very interesting, the stories, and now the also. I don't know if I might have been at the other site too that you provided. I think I might have been there
Aliens
because
and children.
I remember looking at those drawings. I saw those drawings before, but I think it's a wealth
It's
of
a very
information.
the aliens and children does not work on iPhones. I'm retired. I don't have the money to pay somebody to redo the site. StopAbductions.com has been redone so you can see it on an iPhone. But
Yes.
the old site, I can't have done. It's got 150 drawings on it, and since I'm retired, I can't pay thousands of dollars to a webmaster to redo it. I'm sorry, it's still up, so you'll have to use it on your computer.
Do you foresee a future where a lot more people are aware of this technique, of this remedy, and this being something that's known to throughout the world? Maybe at some point where, if you want to keep aliens away from you, this is what you got to do, and you'll see more and more people once they start realizing. Because I think a lot of people out there still are not accepting this reality. But the bottom line is, this is really happening, and a lot of people don't want to accept this, and I understand it. And maybe some people they need to go through life like this, and that's perfectly fine. But the bottom line is, if you want to really avoid this, this might be something that you want to think about. If you're somebody who's being affected by it, rather.
We need some big event to happen so I can go on television and tell people. I've been on television when I was on the Canadian show How the World Ends. I got a lot of emails and contacts, but people still really look at television, not the computer. If you type in "stop alien abductions" in Google, it comes up as a #1 site.
Yes.
But you have to type in "stop alien abductions" to look at it. It still gets like 400 visits a day, but I don't get a whole lot of people actually contacting me. But I'm sure other people are making the site. We need some kind of event to happen to make people aware of alien abductions. And the aliens have been very good at hiding what they're doing.
Yes,
Really,
totally agree. I totally agree with you there. They're masters at it. I mean,
they're
obviously
masters at
their
it.
technology is so much greater than what we've got that obviously they have this ability
No,
over
no.
us.
The key here, the key here on iPhones is the aliens are telepathic. They can read your mind, so they know when you're going to take a video. That's why there aren't any videos because they know what you're going to do. If you're wearing a hat, they don't know. If somebody with a hat manages to take a video and puts it on the internet, that'll be revolutionary. But that has not happened. That's why people ask, well, gee, why don't we have more pictures? Because the aliens can read your mind and they know you're taking the picture, so they step out of it. So
Well,
they've outsmarted us.
well, see, you're not aware of this, but one of the things that we've been talking about a lot over the last year on my podcast is this incident that happened in Las Vegas in 2023, where
Right,
there
right,
was some footage filmed, and a
right.
close examination of that video shows multiple different anomalies showing up. But we've had, it's just hasn't gotten it's been on some mainstream stuff, but some people still are denying what they're seeing with their own eyes at this point, even though the evidence is all, I
It's
mean, the totality of the
it's
evidence
true. It's
shows.
hard to believe. Yeah,
It's hard
yeah.
for
Well,
some people to believe. It
that's
just is.
that's an interesting thing about this. We don't believe in space travel, but I've been doing this. Well, actually, I've been interested in it since 1952, and I've been making hats since 1999. And my observation is space travel must be easier than we think because there's so many aliens doing it. There's actually I feel there's a lot of aliens visiting the Earth, and we just don't want to admit it. It's fantastic. And here's this one astronomer who put me on his website and had his students comment on it, but he's never contacted me. So they may give it lip service, but that's all they're doing. Yeah, it's very hard to believe. I've also seen some good videos of the aliens in Florida and the Florida Mall, which some of them I think are really authentic, but not much has happened with that either. So yeah, I've seen the Las Vegas videos too.
Yeah, the
But yeah,
Vegas one, there's no denying. As far as like, I've had an expert on here, a video expert named Scott Roeder. He's a crime scene reconstruction expert, and you know, I mean, there's just the video wasn't he was able to determine that the video was authentic. And then when you take a close look at the video, you see faces appearing and disappearing. Obviously they have this ability to cloak themselves somehow or make themselves invisible.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt about it. And at this point, I mean, there was a lot of cases beforehand. I mean, the Betty and Barney Hill, Roswell,
Sure, right.
Lonnie Zamora. I mean, there's some cases have physical trace evidence, like the Lonnie Zamora case, but this here had it all as far as I was concerned. And the Ariel school incident, how could it be denied? I mean, some of us are just pretending like this is not real. The scientific community, for the most part, stays away from it because they're afraid of the stigma. I think a lot of them, but I think it's getting better because of the last few years. But the one thing that nobody wants to talk about is the thing we're talking about right here, is the alien abduction aspect of it, because that's where the you know we're
Well, it's so fantastic that they can move people through walls.
yeah.
I have an abduction. She remembers being taken through the wall, being floated out of her room, taken through the wall, and put on a craft. And it's also we're squeamish. We don't like to talk about sex. People don't talk about sex, and that's what the aliens do.
Yeah,
It's sex.
yeah,
They take
it's an
sperm from men
embarrassing
and
thing.
egg from women. And the men came back and said, "Do you know what happened? I was forced to screw somebody, and it wasn't human."
Yeah,
And
that's totally embarrassing.
That's embarrassing. They're embarrassed.
Yeah,
They don't want to say it. They don't
yeah,
want to talk about it. The aliens are having a great time. They're walking all over us because we don't want to talk about it.
yep.
They're getting away with it. Yeah, no, they're doing very well. They're doing this all over the world. Americans are vocal about it. Australians are vocal about it. Europeans not as much. But they're doing this in India. They're doing this in Russia. They're doing this in Brazil. You know, they're doing this in Iceland. Every country in the world, the people are being abducted. They just don't like to talk about it, especially when it comes to sex. People don't like to talk about sex, and that's
Right.
the aliens' main thing.
Yeah,
They're using us for reproductive purposes.
yep. They got us over a barrel.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say this. I want to say thank you very much today, Michael, for showing up and talking about all these things. It is it's very interesting, and it is what you have here, what you've developed is a solution, and that people out there who are having issues with this alien abduction, and I would imagine a lot of people that go to your website, they're probably not, like you said, a lot of people don't contact you. They're probably looking at the instructions though and doing it themselves because they're probably embarrassed.
Yeah.
They don't want to talk about this with anyone else. It's too personal.
Well, and any large hat that will hold 8 sheets of Velostat will work. Doesn't have to be a leather hat. This is a baseball cap, so you can do that.
Like I said, I'm going to leave the links in the description for both of your websites, and
Okay.
people could check out, and if they want to, construct their own or contact you, one or the other. There's a solution if you're affected by this. This is Michael Menkin offers a possible solution for you. It's not 100% guaranteed, as he stated, but you got, if this is all you got, this is all we have right now.
It's the best thing we have, and it works. Okay. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it very much.